He'll happily take those questions while we move on with our presentations now. And I'm privileged to be able to present to you myself this morning in terms of moving us back from the technological look that Mario had, if you will, almost into one about people and thinking about where we are on leading through a growth mindset. So maybe what I should do to start that off is think about where we are first and foremost with my first slide. And here's Eric Yuan, the CEO of Zoom, by the way, who said just a couple of short weeks ago, hey, listen, I'm suffering from Zoom fatigue as well. So we understand that, Eric, and I hope nobody on our conference is suffering from Zoom fatigue right now. As I move into this presentation, a little bit of background on myself as well as being a facilitator at events. I've been a keynote speaker around the world on the subject of change, which I've studied most of my working life. I've been privileged to do strategy with people like Richard Branson and Bill Gates, as well as people who Qatar Airways and a whole bunch of other organizations. But more than ever, I'm fascinated by the concept of change in its own particular regard and looking towards the future. And that's what I'm going to share with you a little of this morning when you start thinking about the way the future should be for us in terms of where we are. And literally, when we woke up to the start of this new decade, and that's excusing the pandemic scenario, we thought that a tech-smart, seamless, more connected, better planet literally awaited us all. And to a large extent, it did. Where we're going now post-pandemic is rather interesting as well, because predicting the future is rather difficult in its own regard. Lots of us are trapped by habit and by routines in terms of what guides us every single day. And I guess what you've heard from all of the speakers so far is that routine needs to be broken. We need to create new habits and not just celebrate the old ones in terms of where they come from. And it gets harder that. The older you are, the more difficult it is. You know, one of the themes of this event is to learn to connect and to engage. And here's one of my favorite quotes from Douglas Adams, who wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and told us that the answer to everything was 42. He said that anything when you're born is normal and ordinary, the way the world works. You know, my 2-year-old grandchild in Austria picks up an iPad every evening to call my wife and has dinner with my wife here in the UK. And that's just the way the world works for Emma. The problem is, though, said Douglas Adams, that when you're over 35, everything then seems to be a little bit confusing. It's against the natural order of things. So we've got to make sure as we get older, we keep that sense of freshness and understand where it is that we're coming from. We need to break traditional thinking boundaries. You know, we talked of that earlier this morning in terms of that diversity and inclusivity scenario as well. Most businesses, however, aren't geared for anything other than traditional thinking. You know, the way that they're structured down with the board at the top, then the CEO, the management. I mean, most companies are structured the way they were 250 years ago when the Industrial Revolution began. And then they were modeled, because we're creatures of habit, on things that we knew from the past. So we built companies where we put groups of people together, literally into a scenario that was modeled on the army. That's why you've got the generals at the top and the boots on the ground down at the bottom. And it's been the way that the companies have operated literally since the Industrial Revolution began. You know, what's intriguing about that, it's led us into a sense of bureaucracy, a sense of red tape. And that traditional thinking is slowing us down in terms of the world that is changing so rapidly right now. And the Black Swan didn't help either. You know, the Black Swan, I don't even want to mention the C word, but we all know what we've been living through for the last 18 months or so. And it was absolutely ridiculous. The Black Swan, and I apologize to anyone who may have lost a friend, a colleague, a partner, a family member because of the virus itself. But a Black Swan, when it arrives, is a single sudden event that literally changes everything. And as a result of that, you know, this damn virus thing, I've got a cuddly one here just to remind me of what it did to us every single day. This damn virus changed everything and made it even harder to break into a new style of thinking. What we need to understand, though, is that in our lifetime, you know, the global picture of economics, of politics, of trade, of balances of power is historically different. It's changed fundamentally. The world used to be geared to what came out of the West. Now it seems to be a lot more geared to what comes out of the East. And if you look at the numbers, they're quite amazing. 38 of the world's megacities are inside that yellow circle. A megacity is a city with more than 10 million inhabitants. 22 of them inside that yellow circle. And as a result of that, we can see that that's where most global growth comes from. People, innovation, new things, doing their own stuff. And that's why Asia is so dominant in terms of its overall approach. No matter what Joe Biden says or Donald Trump said before him, America is only responsible today for 11% of global growth. And you can see now why trade wars have occurred at that particular level, because the America that used to be great, shall we say, in inverted commas, has now given way to the Asian tigers and the economies that have boomed there. You know, for those of us in Europe at the moment right now, Europe is 4% of global growth, and that was with Britain inside the EU, you know, not counting the fact that it's now gone through the Brexit scenario. The balances of power and things in the world are totally different from what they used to be. And what we need to understand is that massive disruption as a result of that has occurred in our lifetime. Old companies have given way to young companies. Valued companies have given way to fast growth companies, and manufacturing has given way to technology-based companies. And that's the industry you're in right now. So that's good news. But what we need to be is not stuck in our ways. You know, as Mario said, when you lift up from a Kubernetes point of view, a brand new technology that he's been working with, he's learned that process and his organization deliver against that beautifully. We've all got to learn new things continuously. And the learning pyramid is quite intriguing for me, because whatever we learn and everything we do as humans is learned behavior. Whatever we learn, we start off from a place that psychologists would call unconscious incompetence, or we don't know what we don't know. And as we begin to learn something, we move one rung up the ladder into what you can then call conscious incompetence, where you're aware of what it is that you don't know at that particular level. Think of driving lessons, for example. And only when you passed your driving test, in the case of learning something like that, when the driving instructor says to you, he or she says to you, congratulations, you've passed, that means you've reached the learning stage called conscious and competent. And at that moment, when you hear the words, you've passed your driving exam, you are the best driver in the world. It's the same for anything that we learn on an ongoing basis. But look at what's next on my slice of pizza. What's coming up here? Unconscious incompetence is the biggest piece of that slice, because we tend to forget what we've learned after, let's say, 2 weeks. And that's why you couldn't get great insurance when you immediately passed your driving license, even though that day you were the best driver in the world. Because the insurance industry knows, because of data, that literally after 2 weeks you've gone, okay, I've learned something, bring something on next. I can do that now. I can drive in my sleep. I can use my mobile phone, for example, whilst I'm driving now. And that proves just how unconscious people are. And that becomes dangerous. The top of that pyramid, right up there, is the peak of Kilimanjaro, or Everest, if you will. Conscious excellence. And management consultants have told us for years that we should be striving for conscious excellence. And I think even Malcolm Gladwell said it takes 12 to 15,000 hours of constant practice for you to do so. I'm going to tell you that I don't believe that. I think right now that what we should be doing is going down one step on the pyramid. We should be getting back in everything that we do in our working lives to the time that we were attuned, when we were conscious and competent. Because 99% of your competitors right now are living in that unconscious competence space. So if you want to steal any market, bring yourself back to the level of being conscious and competent, and you're more likely to win. Here's why people are literally living in that unconscious competent stage. Everything we do, we learn. Everything we learn from, we forge into our experiences. Those experiences rapidly turn into what we could call beliefs. And those beliefs then become our behaviors. And our behaviors literally become our actions. If we're stuck in the same behavioral thinking patterns without learning new things, without being fresh, our actions will become reduced over time in terms of them being able to deliver anything that's literally worthwhile or solid. Our behaviors become repetitive. Now, we all know we're in this game. Technology continues to enable faster change. And when I said earlier that we've seen more change in our lifetime than any other human beings who've ever lived, let's look at the recipe for change. We got PCs in the 1970s. We moved a decade later into the world of mobile communications with literally mobile phones. We got the internet in the 1990s. My kids still don't believe that I'm older than Google, but it's true, and most of you are as well. Beyond that, as the new century began, we moved into the era of collaboration, because with so much technology, we could start to tie it all together. The decade that we've just been through was the era of convergence, and how many of you use that word in your day-to-day client conversations or internal company discussions. It was right because of the speed and pace of where we are. Now, we're meant to kick off this era, this decade of big data right now. And even though we've had that minor hiccup of the Black Swan, it's coming. Let's just look at what's happened in your life. The speed of 1G in the 1980s. Thank God we didn't have the pandemic in the 1980s, when all you could do was make a call on a very basic 1 kilogram weighing mobile device. It was even better that we just didn't have text messages, because those developed with 2G back in the early 1990s. 3G took us into the realm of wireless, and we started to get into a broader-based cloud world, literally as the last decade kind of handed over into the zeros to the tens, if you will. And where we're going now is not about things in your bloodstream. 5G gives us what we need, the unlimited capacity to be able to move forward. And that means there is a new formula for business success. It is in many respects totally different to what you had before. If you'd studied an MBA literally last decade, or I guess before the start of the century, they would have told you at the best business schools that it was all about your past, taking your past, modifying it a little bit into your present, and that would give you a sense of future. That was the essence of an MBA back then. But the new formula for winning companies today, and the winning companies today look very different to those that have gone before. The new formula today says it doesn't matter about your past. It really doesn't matter about your present. What matters today is your uniqueness. What sets you apart? What makes you different, that if you're lucky in a world of 7.8 billion humans and over 150 million registered companies, that you might have a future if you move forward into that particular regard. Change that used to take a generation is now happening in weeks or months, and 2022 is literally around the corner for us. It's coming whether we like it or not, as we unlock. And when you study what most businesses have done up until this point, the old-fashioned, out-of-date businesses, if you will, you can take a generalized survey and have a look at what they achieve in terms of that survey. They are overmanaged, over-administered, literally above the line. They talk a communication story, but they're not delivering a very good one. This, on the other hand, is what people want in terms of where they are. We're not delivering terribly much here in terms of communication, service, relationships, collaboration, the adaptation of new technologies and the adoption of them, as well as the data world. But literally, when you ask people what it is that they want outside of those organizations, they tell you they don't want all of this admin. They don't want over management. They don't want the service levels that you deliver currently at the moment. They want greater service levels at those things, and they want even more collaboration. They want even more technology. And quite simply, in a world where we're used to tapping on glass for a solution, they're quite happy for data to be a part of that world. Data is the new oil, let's face it. And when you think about data in its own regard, as a product, oil simply has no value in its raw form. But when it's captured and interpreted properly, it becomes highly valuable. And why data is the way forward for us and everything that we should be considering, it's all about what every speaker has talked about so far, without exception, on this platform, the cloud. And what data does, it allows known information to be calculated, assessed, reasoned, and delivering certain things to us that we can use. And it's in a world of connected people and connected technologies. That's today's world. Connected people who are more empowered, who are more involved, who are more engaged than ever before, using and through connected technologies, which are instant, they're useful, and they're simple. And big data is no more than a combination of structured, old-fashioned data in a tabular form, if you will, semi-structured, non-tabular CSV files or whatever, and then unstructured data using audio, video, and imagery. Connected people and connected technologies in a world driven by data is the way that our future needs to be seen and looked at. You know, when you talk about it, we mentioned this yesterday, 44 zettabytes a day, 44 zettabytes are being used of data this year in 2021 right now. And a zettabyte, as you know, is 1 trillion gigabytes. So we'll use 44 zettabytes of data around the planet this year. And we were talking with one of our speakers yesterday about the fact that in just 4 years' time, 463 zettabytes of data will be played with every single day. This really is the way forward. And even right now, when you look at things like sequencing the human genome, you know, that project to sequence the human genome began in 1990 with older, more outdated technology. It took 13 years to sequence the first human genome and over 3 billion American dollars. 2 weeks ago, a device was released that allows you in a handheld form to do the same thing for less than $299 on a handheld device. I rest my case. You know, technology is moving at a pace that we need to stay with massively and massively quickly. So the future for you depends on what it is that you do today. And what we need to understand, data originates with our people, our customers, our partners, and we need to harness it. We need to talk to them. And then what we need to do is, from the understanding of what that data does for us, is generate new ideas, new opportunities, and growth. Literally what we should be considering while we're doing that, as per our panel discussion this morning. Let's talk about ethics, morals, values, inclusivity, diversity, because that's the way the new world is. Data, thoughts, and our behaviors. What we need to leave behind are the negativity, habits, and routines that we normally start with every single day. You know, what's incredible about that is that we haven't commuted to work for a while because of the pandemic. But let's just go back to when that just began. What did you do every morning? You left home. You turned left or right. You went out there to try and navigate your way to work on whatever form of transport you used. And you went at the same time every day and the same route every day. And then you moaned about traffic around you without realizing that you, in fact, were the traffic. Now, that's kind of crazy when you think about it at that level. We need to try and embrace new things. And what we've learned during the pandemic, if any good came out of this damn thing at all, it's the fact that we've learned that we can embrace change quite quickly. We didn't like it at first, but now we've started to get used to the idea of flexi working. We've started to get used to the idea of not commuting so often. Wow. If you'd suggested that 18 months ago, people would have laughed at you. Very few companies, except the most progressive ones, were working around that scenario already. So it's intriguing. We can learn new behaviors, and we must do so at that particular level as well. You know, when you think about a major European retailer, here's John Lewis for you as an example of that kind of learning. Dame Sharon White, and I'm pleased to say, for the sake of our panelists earlier, yes, we have a woman, and by the way, she's a woman of color, who is the chairwoman of John Lewis, this massive retail organization that spreads across Britain. She said 2 weeks ago, we've seen a decade of changes in shopping habits in just 1 year. Now, that for me is kind of remarkable when you think about it. That means you've got to have a sense of new vision moving forward. That means that when you're driving into your own destiny, you respond to it. What Dame Sharon Lewis has done is she's steering her John Lewis vehicle now into a new era. They're closing down retail stores. They're upping their online presence. They're making their retail stores more of a hybrid theatrical experience, a destination that people would go to for something that they can engage in. And the online shopping will deliver the instantaneous clicks, value, delivery, and prices. The world of retail is changing fundamentally as well, as all worlds are. A decade of changes that we've seen over a decade now happen in 1 year. It's kind of remarkable. And we're not going backwards. Nobody ever goes backwards. It's time for us to plan our new journey ahead, to look at how we simplify new road signs that we didn't learn during our driving test, how we smarten up, and literally how we specialize in terms of where it is that we go. You know, the Chinese have done that incredibly well. When you look at this man, Confucius, who taught the Chinese how to think and believe, the great sage, you can buy Confucius's entire works and download them to a Kindle right now if you want. Costs about 99 US cents. I'm going to save you the dollar. And what Confucius did was he taught the Chinese how they could think and feel. And it took them, like us, until the 1970s, 3,000 years later, to do it, because we first got the technology, all of us around the world, at the same time in the 1970s. And if you decipher what Confucius said and what China has done since the 1970s, it's quite remarkable. By following his advice, they've lifted their entire country out of poverty. Pre-1970, 88% of China lived in poverty. Today, less than 2% of the Chinese do. And the Chinese have a goal to eradicate poverty by 2025. That's in our lifetimes, by the way. And when you think about what Confucius said, and he said some great stuff, this is my favorite quote. And if you don't speak Mandarin, let me translate that for you. Life, said Confucius, is simple, but humans complicate life. And there on the streets of Beijing, on a dusty statue, is an ancient equivalent of a Chinese post-it note with Confucian theory written on it. If you blow that up and translate it and take a look, this is what it becomes. How you eliminate everything else. How you identify what's important to you. Oh, I've gone one slide too many. Let me go back one. I beg your pardon. How you identify what's important to you. How you then eliminate everything else. And literally with number 3, if you can't do it on your own, you automate it, you delegate it, or you get help. That's the modern rule for simplifying your life right now. And I guess when it comes into the era of smartening up, well, smartening up is quite simple as well. It means what we all are, hopefully, networked, techno-savvy, awake to new ideas and behaviors, to people. That's the prerequisite for success in literally where we are right now, 2021. And whether you're operating with your own business or your customers' businesses in this world, the world of bricks, for example, bricks and mortar, you're going to need what I would call an EPA. You need to deliver, as Sharon Lewis is doing with the John Lewis of the future, Dame Sharon Clark is doing with the John Lewis of the future. You need to deliver an experience, you need to deliver price, and you need to deliver availability. And then with the world that's opposite to bricks and mortar, if you're in the world of technology or clicks, you need an IPD. You need to be instantaneous. You need to have the price, and you need to have the delivery. Those are the 6 words, to my mind, that best sum up most businesses in terms of where you are right now. Pardon me. So if you're a combination of both of those, wow, you're on the right lines. It's a new world out there. We need to understand our priorities. We need to engage. We need to develop new strategies and start to refocus where it is that we've come from. We need to start thinking about aligning and embracing brand new technology. And then literally in that level, we need to develop uniqueness, and from it uncover a new sense of our purpose. And a sense of your purpose lays strongly within your original company DNA. Go back and uncover that. What was it that you were originally setting up your company to be? Develop uniqueness. Look at your purpose. And purpose and relevance are absolutely crucial to your marketplace in this day and age. When you have that in place, you need to engage constantly, learn, relearn, unlearn, and drive towards that delivery to make sure that the world is moving in the right direction for you and you're in tandem with the pace of where the world goes. I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that it's absolutely essential to co-create and communicate your own business unique formula with all target markets. It's essential in this day and age. And you can call it, if you will, a result of digital transformation, because digital transformation is literally out there and it's all about the people. And I think when we consider that, technology and people using data and the enormity of where it is that we've come from, you've discovered the future and it will arrive for you. Wow, it's been an absolute honor and privilege for me to present that to you today. Just my thoughts as a change consultant on the principles of where you are. I hope you find it useful. Remember, this will be available to you, as all the presentations will. Pardon me. As all the presentations will on this platform for the next 30 days as well. Right, time for us to move on, ladies and gentlemen. Let's do so, if I may.